So what people don't remember for some reason is that during the AIDS crisis, Dr. Fauci was the enemy of the gay community because they claimed he was keeping drugs away from them that could help them. And in fact, they did a movie called The Dallas Buyers Club, and it was all about how these gay people had to come together and illegally or serendipitously or secretly get drugs that would help people who had AIDS that the government was trying to suppress because Big Pharma couldn't make money off them. That's the basis of that movie, The Dallas Buyers Club. And the guy who was the bad guy in that movie is Dr. Fauci. He was the one keeping drugs from those people, and he did the exact same thing with Corona.
Meanwhile, approving a drug that was poison
for AIDS. Yes. Yeah. So, did you know that gay liberal activists stormed the N.I.H. in 1990? They blamed Dr. Anthony Fauci for blocking cheap and effective AIDS treatments and for only promoting expensive and toxic drugs that benefited Big Pharma. A lot of people say he did the exact same thing with COVID.
I mean,
the exact same thing. The exact same thing. That's what people are saying. He did the exact same thing. What?
They're all wrong.
Yeah. Oh, they're all wrong.
Like people every so often just make up conspiracies about Fauci every pandemic.
Yeah, every time. Fauci did the exact same thing during COVID-19. That's so I don't know. Here's a picture. Dr. Fauci, you're killing us. I don't know if there's Reagan. They wasted 2 years trying to. You're killing us.
Well, look at like Reagan's the president back then.
Yeah.
It shows you how bipartisan that he's been the whole time for every president doing the same Big Pharma shit.
Yes.
The whole
Fauci,
time.
you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a quick video that gives you it's about this protest.
I'm Michael Petrellis, and I'm pissed. You know, the whole thing with the National Institutes of Health is they won't test any of these drugs that'll keep people alive. And I got this saying, no peptide T, no compound Q. Anthony Fauci, I piss on you.
We're protesting testing out here in front of the fucking NIH because they're not hiding all drugs and they're not coming out with the cure and they're not doing their job.
We're talking about their conflict of interest with the pharmaceutical companies. We're talking about the fact that they don't allow people of color into their trials. We're talking about the fact that they don't care about women. They don't care about children.
Storm the NIH! Storm the NIH! Storm the NIH!
There's a blatant conflict of interest, and this runs rampant through all of NIH. And this is the history of how AZT became the subject of over 80% today of the studies being done by NIH for AIDS treatments. This one drug that's already shown itself to be highly toxic, very expensive, and of, at best, extremely limited effectiveness.
So it seems very similar to how they wouldn't do the tests on ivermectin. They wouldn't do the tests on hydroxychloroquine. They wouldn't do, because it takes a lot of money to do those kind of big tests. And then they would, when they would do a test, they would do it incorrectly. They wouldn't give the right dosage. They would give it to people at the wrong times. They would do things that they knew would
juke the numbers a little bit.
Yeah. So that's what a lot of people are saying. There's more to this video.
It's too toxic for me, and there's nothing which I can take. And the only drug which these people seem to have any concern with is AZT. Obviously, there's something going on here between the makers of AZT and the NIH.
Fauci is the head of the NIH, and he hasn't done much in that area. 80% of the drugs are still dealing with AZT. And the NIH runs the drug trial systems.
Staff of NIH, the very people that make the decisions about which treatments are going to get studied and which treatments are going to be ignored, are getting money from the leading drug companies to do testing of those drugs.
So what happened to the gay community during coronavirus? Why did they forget this? What happened to the LGBT
I'll tell
community?
you the sad thing, probably a bunch of people are dead by now because, you know, they couldn't try other drugs. Like, we probably just had to wait out.
But you don't think that gay people who are my age remember that?
I wonder, dude.
Right? And where the hell are they?
Is this in the Disney Plus Fauci documentary about his amazing life too? I wonder. Because Disney's a big pro LGBTQ.
Yeah, I know.
Did they mention this?
I don't know if they mentioned this. Let's watch more of this.
How can those people possibly be objective?
They literally stormed the NIH. Now, if when Trumpers do this, they call them all terrorists.
With a severed head onto, I mean...
Well, they got Fauci's head on a
Kathy
stick.
Griffin can't even do that on Twitter.
That's
they showed
right.
up with a head on a stick.
At his office.
Yeah, like, that seems more threatening than anything anyone said on it at all.
No peptide T, no compound Q. Anthony Fauci, I piss on you.
It's amazing even back then they were calling, and you know, especially back in the 80s, the way, like, yeah, whatever, they're gay. Everybody could just dismiss
Yeah,
that.
you could dismiss them because they were gay with
And
AIDS.
then now you get to see it now, come back. I guess that's what happens when you do that.
But now it seems like I don't know where those people are. Where are the radicals inside the gay community? They're gone. They're not talking about any of this stuff anymore. They have complete amnesia.
I mean, probably the same place half the hippies went after the 60s and they became yuppies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Here's what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Tweeted out. You know what? Twitter changed their fucking letter sizes. And it's much smaller now.
Agreed.
It's hard to read on a video now. Twitter made their letter sizes way smaller. So I'll just read this to you. He says, this is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He says, fact checkers denounced me for promoting vaccine misinformation when I pointed out Fauci's agency owned Moderna's patent and stood to make $500 million in money from the vaccine that Fauci developed in his lab, exempted from viable safety testing and liability, and then forced on public with lies, propaganda, and coercion. What a business plan. Now, that's what he's saying. I'm not saying it because the vaccine was tested fully, and it's super safe and effective, and it keeps you from getting seriously ill or dead, and it slows the transmission. It's great.
Why would you believe Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over Dr. Fauci?
Why would you believe a hero to the environmental movement up until he found out about vaccines? He was a hero.
Yeah, I call
He's
him
like man of the year.
Sourpuss is what I call him.
Yeah. Under the agreement with Moderna, the company made what is described as a $400 million catch-up payment to the NIH. So do you see how this works? Then Fauci gets to distribute that money. So that's how Fauci keeps a muzzle on anybody who wants to speak against what the NIH is saying, because he controls the purse strings with everybody who gets research money.
You know, the same way they have a muzzle on you at your job?
Yes. And that's how they control people in universities.
That's how every job works. And for everything from comedy to, that's how you got Jon Stewart to not mention that thing again.
Yeah.
That's what cancel culture was. All these dippy liberals thought was just great. It's a way to it's basically like sanctions and terrorism is what it is.
And the NIH at Moderna has to give a percentage of their profits for the vaccine to the NIH. And they think this is great for the University of Dartmouth's size. So that the NIH then also gave some of that money to the universities that do the research for the mRNA technology. And these payments were game-changing royalty payments to Dartmouth's. For a University of Dartmouth size, the payments were game-changing.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
The university said that it had already received $117 million from vaccine makers that had reached earlier agreements to license the spike technique. This is how when a professor at a university speaks up, like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya did at was it at Stanford or Harvard? He was at one of those Ivy League schools, and
don't dick around with our payday with your loose lips.
But that he was shunned. Why? Because the university's getting all this money from Big Pharma. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with corporate TV. Why do they repeat talking point from military-industrial complex and Big Pharma? Because that's who pays their bills.
I mean, they literally say it to you after they get done doing it. It says, brought to you by
Pfizer.
Raytheon. And
Yeah.
I'd never heard of Raytheon before I saw you show clips of MSNBC saying brought to you by Raytheon.
And Boeing. If you want to see my stand-up special, become a member at jimmydore.com. It's only $10, and come see our live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, St. Paul, Honolulu, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, and more.